some remaining questions that I had in relation to Section 18C and the Racial Discrimination Act. I didn't have enough time to finish, unfortunately, so I thought I'll come back if I have time.
Senator.
So here we go. I'm aware...
Yes, Senator.
I'm aware that concerns have been expressed by various members of the public and organisations about the risk of a perception that Australia is becoming more tolerant of racism.
Well, I hope
as
that's
a result,
not the case,
no.
Senator.
Well, I would hope it wouldn't be too, but certainly that's a concern that's been raised by people who have talked to me and in the public debate. Certainly, I don't think that sense that some people are concerned about that would come as a surprise to you, given the number of submissions that you've received on the exposure draft.
Senator Brandis, can we... Sorry, I think Senator Wright's getting to a question.
Yeah, I am.
Can we have the question
all right,
first?
fair enough. So basically, concerns have been raised, and particularly I'm aware of concerns that have been expressed by providers of higher education services to overseas students, which is an important aspect of our economy now, about risks that would arise from a perception overseas from parents sending their children to Australia to be educated, that Australia is becoming more tolerant of racism, and that has been expressed to me on the back of issues around Indian students some years ago and so on. I'm wondering, has there been any consultation by you or the department with stakeholders like this, or any modelling about the potential economic consequences of repealing protections against racial hate speech?
Well, I don't know that this is an issue that you deal with through economic modelling, so the answer to that part of your question is no. Senator, let me be very frank with you. I do not think Australia is a racist country. I do not. I do not think Australians are a racist people. I do not. But there are elements of the community of whom that can't be said, unfortunately. I think they're a very small minority. But there are elements of the community of whom that cannot be said. But in general, I think Australians are a famously tolerant and welcoming people. Now, you've asked your questions in the context of Section 18C. One of the principal philosophical reasons why I hold the view I do is because I think that where you have isolated pockets of racism in the community, it's best to expose it rather than suppress it. And we can have a difference of view about that, but that is my strong view. And as I said to you before, that's a view I share, among others, with President Obama, who made a very strong statement to that effect only a couple of weeks ago. Now, Senator, I'm not surprised that some people may be saying that to you, but I don't think it's the case. And the one example you've instanced, that is the case of Indian students. There were attacks on Indian students in Melbourne in particular a few years ago, completely unrelated to this debate. I believe that did have an effect on the market for student services in India, and I know that a number of political leaders from the state government at least, if not from the federal government of the day, went to India to reassure the government and public authorities there about the safety of Indian students in Melbourne. That was violence, had nothing to do with this debate. The most recent indicator we've had about Australia's reputation as a safe place to international students has been the Reverse Colombo Plan, a policy of the Abbott government, which has been developed by Julie Bishop and is being run by Senator Mason. Now, that is part of Australia's international engagement as a major education provider, and it has been fabulously successful.
Right. Can I I'll just draw you back because I do have a limit, and there is one more question I wanted to ask, and that is, so I take it that when I asked about consultation, there hasn't been specific consultation with those sorts of stakeholders about about this?
No, that's not right. I said there hadn't been any economic modelling.
Yeah, you did say that, so I'm wondering about the consultation.
In relation, I'm sorry, well, let me come to that.
Education service providers, I mean, particularly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Who do provide education services to overseas students.
I've talked with a number of people involved with higher education policy about this issue, but I haven't had a specific meeting with education service providers specifically to discuss this particular measure, but I've talked quite often because I know a lot of people who are involved in this policy area in general about the issue.
And have they raised concerns that this no one's raised those concerns
No, they
with
haven't.
you?
I'm not saying that there mightn't be some who do have those concerns, but not with
I'm
me.
asking you, you're saying that they haven't. And look, the other aspect of my question is, again, comes to this perception, this risk. There's certainly, again, concern. I've met with people extensively, and these are the things that I'm relaying that concern me. The risk of raising a flag to people who are of a racist tendency in Australia, with some of the incidents that we're all familiar with that come up from time to time in social media and so on, footballers and so on, that it is actually a sense of giving a flag to people that racism is acceptable in Australia.
Well, it's not acceptable.
Well, no, it is. Well, that's the perception, that's the concern. And if I could bring you to the fact that I do, and I'm coming to it, that's in this context, that Frederick Tobin, who is a Holocaust denier, is an example of someone who has embraced the proposed changes to Section 18C, and he's calling the current law
What is the question,
a Holocaust protection law, and has welcomed its repeal. And its views like that. Are you concerned about the risk that going down this track will actually provide succour to people who have those sorts of repellent views? And I know your views on the public record about your views about Mr Tobin, but he has extreme and repellent views, and people like him are apparently taking succour from the proposed...
The question was, are you concerned about
the proposed changes?
Okay.
Are you concerned about that?
Okay, well, but Senator, look, I'll answer your question, but you can't give a preamble like that without giving me the opportunity to respond to it. The answer to your
I'm not stopping you from responding.
Thank you. The immediate answer to your question is no, I'm not concerned, because, as I said before, I think Australians are not a racist people. I think they are decent and welcoming and tolerant and sensible. Now, I'm sorry that Mr Tobin's name has come into this debate. Mr Tobin is a nutcase. I mean, I don't want to be rude about any citizen. Mr Tobin is a nutcase, and I'm sure that there are lots of nutcases who vote for the Greens, and I'm sure there are lots of nutcases who vote for the Labor Party. Just because somebody happens to be...
there's no one who does that. That's unnecessarily political.
No. Just because somebody happens...
Point of order to make.
Point of order.
Okay, let's have the point of order.
I just think that was unnecessary.
What's the point of order?
It was unnecessary to give that.
What is the point of order?
But this is...
Well, just hang on, Senator Brandis. We just want to make sure we do this precisely.
Right. So
there's a point of order on the grounds of...
The point of order is that you're pulling me into being relevant when I'm asking the question. I think those sorts of asides aren't relevant, and I'd expect you to do the same with the person giving their answer. That's all. Well, I think just a sense of fairness here.
Well, there's no point of order. Senator Brandis.
Thanks, Mr Chairman. Well, look, you might say that, Senators. Right, I thought you were a bit better than that, actually, but this is a kind of a guilt by association argument.
No, it isn't.
Let me finish, please. This is kind of a guilt by association argument, because out of 23 million citizens, there is one nutcase who happens to agree with me on a particular thing. Therefore, you're trying to suggest that therefore there is some guilt by association here, and I'm merely making the point that there is more than one nutcase in Australia, and some of them vote for you, and some of them vote for you, Senator Singh, and some of them probably vote for Senator McDonald and me, and that reflects absolutely nothing on any of us.
No. And I would just like to be, given that you've now cast an aspersion about what I was doing there, I was pointing out I need to say this. I think it's only fair, and I'll ask you to comment
Senator,
on this.
We've been through this before, and we've had an altercation today because I haven't stopped people making statements. Then the minister responds, then you respond, and we don't get any questions. And I'm sorry, and now your time has expired anyhow. Your time has expired.
Chair, I absolutely
Look, Mr Tobin, as far as I know...
really unreasonable. I did not...
Well, no.
Senator Wright, for all I know, Mr Tobin lives, I believe, in South Australia. For all I know, he votes for you.
This sitting of the Senate committee is suspended for 5 minutes.
That I just didn't want to leave. I wanted to ask a question and make it clear the question I was asking. I was not, as has been indicated, suggesting that there's guilt by association, and I'm not suggesting that you are a racist person, Senator Brandis, so I want that very clear on the record. But what I was asking is, given that there are people like Mr Tobin and other members of the community who are lining up to celebrate this change to the legislation, who have repellent views, and given that there is a great deal of concern expressed by well-meaning people that this will actually be a red flag to racism, are you concerned about those potential risks?
No, because I have more confidence in the Australian people than obviously you do, Senator. And, you know, I mean, Mr Tobin has, as I've said, is a nutcase. He's a nutcase. N-U-T-C-A-S-E, nutcase. He's got nothing to do with this debate. Senator Wright, you sit in a party room with a colleague who was, for a large part of her adult life, an active and prominent member of the Communist Party of Australia. Her views are repellent. But, you know, there are lots and lots of repellent views. The fact that a person may have repellent views doesn't mean that they infect everybody else in the community.
Thank you, Senator Singh. I won't take any more of your time, much as I'd like to.
Senator Wright, can I give you one piece of information about the Indian students, please, since you asked?
Because there is a... I don't know. I don't actually, Senator Singh.
I think no one knows more about that issue than me. But anyway, let's hear from the Minister.
Maybe
you're happy for the Minister to Senator Singh. Okay.
I just wanted to let you know, Senator Wright, you instanced the attacks on Indian students as potentially an example of Australia having a reputation for racism. The Australian Institute of Criminology did a study in 2011 on those events in Melbourne, and the conclusion of that study, as announced in a press statement of the 11th of August 2011, was that, in the view of the Australian Institute of Criminology, the attacks were not racially motivated. They were motivated by other factors, not racial factors. So I think that's a cautionary tale against throwing this racism word around too freely, frankly.
But the perception reported from Indian families was that they, whether irrespective of the reason for the attacks, the perception that was reported from Indian families was that there was racism in Australia.
I just thought I'd give you that information,
It's
Senator,
not a debate. Senator Singh.